You know what time it is. It's tournament time! It's a Monday in March. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the PHNX Sun Devils show, coming to you live from Studio K, presented by Circle K. Join Inner Circle for free by downloading that Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details. I am Anthony Totri, joined as always by the captain of this lovely ship. We have Captain Redbeard behind the Mac, making all of the magic happen. Do us a solid, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, drop a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. JJB in the chat saying Hurley's Hoopers about to go on a run in Kansas City. Obviously talking about the Arizona State Sun Devils prepping for the Big 12 tournament. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is March, which means tournament season is officially upon us. The Big 12 tournament less than 24 hours away. We've got some fun, interesting matchups to break down throughout the next hour here on the PHNX Sun Devils show. Not just Arizona State. We're taking a look at all the matchups that you got in that first round, maybe some potential second round matchups. Who are the winners? Who are the losers? Who could maybe be some surprises in Kansas City this week? Before we get into all of that fun stuff, I want to discuss Jayden Quaintance. Jayden Quaintance was named to the Big 12 All-Defensive Team and the Big 12 All-Freshman Team. That came out a little bit less than an hour ago. So Arizona State's 5-star freshman center, Quaintance, obviously getting a big nod on both those teams in the conference. A guy who has just been an absolute monster for Arizona State when he's been on the floor. A kid who, when he got to Tempe, defensively, he was there, right? Was leading the country in blocks per game, in total blocks for a short period. I believe since he has missed a good chunk of games, still, I believe in the top 5 nationally in blocks on the season, which is just a ridiculous feat for a kid that is just literally a kid, 17 years of age, the youngest player in college basketball. To get these honors and to be on these lists is truly an incredible thing. Obviously, Jayden Quaintance has missed the last couple of games for Arizona State with a lower body injury, so I don't expect to see him on the court tomorrow for Arizona State. I'm very interested to see if Adam Miller returns as well. I think Adam Miller, there's probably a better chance that you see him for the Sun Devils against Kansas State than seeing Jayden Quaintance. I said when Quaintance went down a couple weeks ago at this point that I would be pretty surprised if you saw him at any point the rest of the season. And you haven't. You haven't seen him even really on the bench for Arizona State. Wasn't on the bench for the Sun Devils on senior day. So I think that's certainly something that you have to keep in mind. But this kid, whether he stays at Arizona State long-term, which I don't think will happen, or enters the portal and goes somewhere else, he is definitely going to be a lottery pick at some point in his career. He is just an absolute specimen of a basketball player, and he's got a really, really bright future ahead. Unfortunately, though, Arizona State doesn't appear to be the spot for Quaintance long-term. At least that is my own personal opinion. We'll see what transpires in the offseason in terms of NIL, the transfer portal, coaching, all the super, super fun stuff. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves in relation to the offseason for Arizona State, let's go ahead. Let's take a look at some of those first-round matchups that we have in Kansas City on Tuesday. Kicking it off with number 13 Cincinnati taking on number 12 Oklahoma State. That is the first matchup that you are going to see in Kansas City tomorrow for the Big 12 tournament. Two teams that haven't really been talked about much in the Big 12 here in 2024, 2025. Two middle of the pack, lower of the pack teams in this conference. They've only played once this season, and it was actually the last game of the regular season for both these squads. Oak State did win that game 78-67. The Cowboys shot like a ridiculous 78% from behind the arc in that game, helping them get that 11-point dub. Now, Cincinnati's Jizzle James, he has been the guy for Cincinnati this season. He had an off night against Oklahoma State, and then Abu Asmain for Oklahoma State scored 24 points in that game. Looking at this matchup and potentially who moves forward in the Big 12 tournament between Oklahoma State and Cincinnati, I do think that this is going to be a much closer game than the 11-point victory that Oklahoma State had just last week. Jizzle James, to me, is the X factor, right? A guy who is, like I said earlier, been the quote-unquote guy for Cincinnati at moments and at points this season. If he has another off night, then I think Oklahoma State goes 2-0 against the Bearcats this season. But if Jizzle James turns it on, then I think you could see Cincinnati win that game. If I had to make an actual vote on this one, I'm going to go ahead and give the nod to Cincinnati. I think the 13 seed squeaks out over Oklahoma State. Captain Redbeard, what say you? Number 13, Cincinnati, or number 12, Oklahoma State in the first matchup in the Big 12 tournament?
I was with you when I first looked at this, and then I took a deeper dive, and I think I'm going to take Oklahoma State.
You taking Oak State?
Yeah, I'm going to go against you, take Oklahoma State. They did just beat Cincinnati in their last matchup, as you mentioned, but I mean, they're putting up a good amount of points.
Yeah.
And I think, from the few games I've seen Cincinnati play, they kind of struggle sometimes on offense.
Yeah.
And so I can see Oklahoma State coming out and really showing up to this game and winning this game. It can kind of go either way, but I'm going to take Oklahoma State.
I think that's fair. Like I said, I think it's going to be a really close game. I could see this one going either way, but I am going to go with Cincinnati on that one. Maybe a less interesting matchup, or maybe it is an interesting matchup, depending on which side of the aisle you're on. Number 16, Colorado, taking on number 9, TCU in the first round of the 2025 Big 12 tournament. They have played twice this season. One win for the Horned Frogs, one win for the worst team in the conference in Colorado. Now, the first time TCU won that game, 68-57. TCU, a smaller team, got out-rebounded pretty bad in that one. But Colorado, like we said, the worst team in this conference, turned the ball over nearly 20 times. Both teams offensively were pretty putrid. It's a miracle that TCU even got to 68 points. Now, the second time around, CU won that game by 20, 76-56. This was one of a game that occurred over the last 2 weeks. Colorado really out-dueling TCU. They out-rebounded TCU badly again, second time this season. They still did turn the ball over 14 times, something Colorado has done a number of times this season. Really can't get out of their own way in a lot of these Big 12 games, just turning it over, giving the opposition in this conference way too many opportunities. CU did play much better defense, though, in that second game, again, holding TCU to 56 points. Now, Julian Hammond played well for CU that second time around. Look, man, my gut is telling me TCU on this one. I know Colorado beat them pretty badly in that second game, the more recent game, but Colorado has been pretty putrid all season long. And when it comes to a one and done, a season on the line type of game, I tend to go with the team that has been maybe a little bit more consistent all season long. Again, TCU, one of the higher seeds playing in this first round of the NCAA tournament. So I'm going to go ahead and go with TCU, but my recency bias here does make me think that this one might be a little bit closer than people initially think. Captain Redbeard, are we on the same wavelength here? Are you going with the Horned Frogs, or are you're doubling down against me and going with CU?
No, I think I got to take TCU. I mean, Colorado has just been really bad this year.
So bad, dude.
Looking at TCU, they've actually had some big wins this year, beating BYU, but also beating Tech by 3.
Yeah.
Huge win for them. And they just kind of feel like one of those teams that can kind of get it going when it's tournament time. So
It's
gonna
definitely
take TCU.
a team I feel like we could get to the third day of the NCAA tournament and TCU still playing. And you're like, how the hell are the Horned Frogs still going, right? But it's the Big 12, right? There are so many of these teams that you can go back and look at what they've done this season, and it's like, okay, well, they do have some big wins, right? You mentioned they beat BYU, who is a top 4 seed in this conference. They beat Tech, who is a top 2 seed in this conference, one of the hotter teams in college basketball over the last 2 months. So, like, anything could happen in some of these tournaments. I do think some of the lower seeded teams, right, the 16s, 15s, 14s, 13s, maybe we're looking at probably a one and done if they do escape their first game. But TCU, I think, is a very interesting squad. Along with the next team that we're going to talk about in Kansas State. They're taking on, obviously, your number 15, Arizona State Sun Devils. Like I said off the top, might be without Adam Miller, might be without Jayden, Quaintance and company as well. We know for a fact that they will be without BJ Freeman in the Big 12 tournament. But these teams are 1-1 against each other this season, and I'll tell you what, these games have been nothing short of entertaining the 2 times that they have played in 2025. First time around, we all know the story. ASU goes up 15 points at one point, and the lead slips away. Something that we've seen the Sun Devils do countless times this season. You get to the very end of this ball game, and Jayden Quaintance heads to the charity stripe, misses them both. That's how it ends. Ball game 71-70 for Kansas State. But only 7 turnovers for ASU in that game. Both teams shot the ball pretty well. Alston Mason had one of his better games this season. He had 20 points. And then you get to the second game. The last conference game that Arizona State has actually won this season. They won that second game against Kansas State 66-54. And the big focal point for the Sun Devils in that one was JQ. That's right. Jayden Quaintance played well, developed his offensive bag. It felt like that was really I'm not going to say the coming out party, but that was a game where I felt like we realized, okay, Jayden Quaintance can be the guy not only on defense, but if he needs to, he could be that guy on offense as well. Amir Ali played well in that game. Great defensive game for Arizona State. Again, holding Kansas State to just 54 points in that one. The Wildcats, they were without one of their top players. Now, looking toward tomorrow's matchup, right, the Tuesday matchup between Arizona State and Kansas State, given what we've seen from Arizona State over the last month, right, we've mentioned it on post-game shows that it's felt like a lot of the same thing, where you play really strong in the first half or you play a really good stretch, and then you ultimately flame out. You just don't have enough depth on the roster to actually get the job done down the stretch. I feel like that's what we're going to see against Kansas State on Tuesday. I think the Wildcats pull out this one. I think this will be the last game that you see from Bobby Hurley at Arizona State. But time will tell. What do you think, Captain Redbeard? You going with the Sun Devils, maybe with a 15-10 upset here, or are you rocking with Kansas State?
I'm sticking with the Sun Devils, man.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, against all odds, I think Alston Mason's going to go for 30 at minimum. You know, it's going to be a big game from him. Bashir's going to continue to be hot, and I think the Sun Devils are going to pull it out. This is one team this year that we've played close, and we've won 1 of 2, and I think that just gives us somewhat of a chance.
Do you feel like this is like, out of all of the draws that they could have got, out of all of the opponents as the 15 seed in the Big 12 tournament, right? There were a number of teams, Kansas State, Utah, West Virginia, that were in play for that 10 seed with about a week and change left. Do you feel like this is probably the best draw that they could have got at the 15 seed, playing a team in Kansas State that they actually already beat this season?
I don't know. Utah would also be a good matchup. Either one was a good matchup for ASU. Both not going to be easy games to win, especially since they just got blown out by Utah last time.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I like this matchup. Like, I think we got a little lucky last game, if you remember that correctly, where like Kansas State like just missed a bunch of shots and they had a chance to pull away and come back and win. But I could see the ball bouncing our way.
It hasn't many times this season. Ball has not bounced in favor of Bobby Hurley's squad too much in conference play. Guys, make sure you hit that like button for us and hit the subscribe button to PHNX Sports if you're not already. Taking a dive into that last first round matchup here in the 2025 Big 12 tournament. You got number 14 UCF taking on number 11 Utah. Now, these teams have only played once this season. UCF did win that only meeting between these two teams by 4 points. Utah turned the ball over about 19 times against the Knights in that one, but they did end up shooting about 50% from the floor. UCF doesn't play the best defense, far from it in this conference, to be honest with you, but we know that UCF really functions and operates as Keyshawn Hall does, a guy that went for 40 plus against Arizona State when they played. If he's on, then I don't think Utah stands much of a chance, to be completely honest with you, and I feel that way for a lot of these first-round matchups. There are some teams that have quote-unquote guys, have just straight-up dudes that when they hit the court and in a game where it is, hey, it's one and done, and they go off, then I think there are a couple teams that really don't stand a chance, Utah being one of those teams, if Keyshawn Hall does end up going off. So I'm going to go with number 14 UCF in this one. Utah, again, they're a weird team. They beat Arizona State a couple weeks ago. They beat Kansas not too long ago. But I just don't think Utah gets it done in this format. What say you, Captain?
I'm going to agree. Utah's been pretty bad recently. Lost 4 of their last 5, like you said, beating ASU in one of those games. And really in the second half of the season, they have not really played well. So I think UCF will show up, one of those teams that I could see, winning some games in this tournament. So I think UCF's going to take it.
Are there any teams in this first round that you think, out of all of the 8 teams that we've mentioned, that you could see not only getting past the first round, but also getting past a potential second round matchup?
Just looking at them now, I think I would take TCU.
Wow.
Yeah.
Big Horned Frogs guy.
Huge. Massive. Yeah, man. I don't know. Just kind of a gut feeling. TCU, like I said, won some big games this year. So I think they can show up.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. I'll give my answer to that question, and we'll get into so much more as it relates to the Big 12 tournament, Arizona State, and all of that fun stuff. But we're going to do that on the other side of this first break. Guys, I don't know if you can see right here behind me, but we have a ton of hats over here. We've got a bunch of hats offset too, all over this office, thanks to our friends over at Branded Bills. Make sure you elevate your brand with Branded Bills. It's the perfect headwear and apparel. Whether you need snapbacks, truckers, fitteds, beanies, or tees, Branded Bills has you covered with both performance and style. But there's another element to throw in there, and that is affordability, okay? You can go to their website, check out what they have over at Branded Bills. Take it from somebody like myself who has actually been down to the Branded Bills facilities and sees the amount of time, effort, and passion that goes into everything as it relates to making these caps. They do put in all of their time, energy, effort, etc. into making sure that you guys have the best possible hats available. Truly one of the best in the business. Make sure you head to brandedbills.com and use that code PHNX for 20% off your first order. Look, ironically enough, my girlfriend's birthday is on Wednesday, and she's been telling me for about 2 weeks now that she knows exactly what she wants for her birthday dinner, and I'm not even joking you. It's Spinatos. She wants Spinatos for dinner, and I said, that's absolutely fine by me. Spinatos, the best pizza in the game. Spinatos Pizzeria, also the place to be for Suns fans. Guys, look, I know the Suns aren't having the greatest season in the world, but you can enjoy the best pizza in the Valley with fellow Suns fans. Go through the pain of the Sun season together, okay? Spinatos, they're hosting official watch parties throughout the year where you can watch the game with the Phoenix Suns dancers and the Gorilla. Get all the info on the watch parties and pizza basketball contest at SpinatosPizzeria.com. Spinatos, the official pizza of the Phoenix Suns. Look, before we get into some more Big 12 basketball conversation. Want to make sure everybody heads to gophnx.com and they grab this merch that we got. Make sure you're wearing green on St. Patrick's Day while showing your PHNX pride with our brand new collection. Okay, you guys can choose from 4 different shirts, including our Day Drinking Champion shirt, the Drunk Leprechaun, and so much more. Okay, a bunch of green tees repping St. Patty's Day and PHNX over on the website. Again, head over to gophnx.com, click on the merch tab, and make sure that you get yours today. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, drop a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. The same question that I asked Captain Redbeard, I'd love to know from everybody in the chat, whether you're watching live, watching after the fact. Let me know if there's a team in the Big 12 tournament that you think could be a potential surprise down the stretch. Maybe they're a first-round team, or maybe they're a team that we're going to talk about here in the second round, right? So we've already mentioned number 13 Cincinnati taking on number 12 Oklahoma State. Well, the winner of that game is going to end up playing number 5 Iowa State. The Cyclones getting pushed out of the top 4 seeds in the Big 12 tournament. Definitely some big news as it relates to the Cyclones, considering this was a team in Iowa State that pretty much all season long was a top-tier team, a top 4 team in this conference. We know what they did and what they accomplished last year in the NCAA tournament. This team defensively is as good as it gets in this conference. Iowa State, a very, very scary, scary team. Cincinnati, if they do end up seeing Iowa State in that second round, they did play once this season. They lost that matchup. Oklahoma State, on the other hand, the one time that they played Iowa State, they did, in fact, win that game. Regardless, I don't think Iowa State is going to lose to either one of these teams when it comes tournament time. Iowa State is a team that will be dancing in March. Cincinnati, Oklahoma State on the outside looking way, 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 way in. Would you agree with me on that note, Captain Redbeard? Iowa State is pretty much going to put the nail in the coffin of either one of these teams.
Yeah, I completely agree. They're a great basketball team, and I don't think either of these teams, Cincinnati just doesn't put enough points up, and then Oklahoma State is so inconsistent, so I just don't see either of them beating Iowa State.
I agree 100%. Moving on to another potential second round matchup. We've talked about number 16 Colorado and number 9 TCU. Winner of that game is going to end up playing number 8 West Virginia. West Virginia is such an interesting team in the Big 12 this season. We know about the hot start that they had in Big 12 play, and they've really, really fizzled out over the last couple of months, falling all the way back to that 8 seed out of the AP top 25. Colorado, they did play West Virginia once this season. They lost that game to the Mountaineers. Number 9 TCU, they played West Virginia twice, ended up going 1-1, splitting that matchup. I know you're big on TCU, right? We've already kind of gone over that. I do think TCU is a team that does match up well against West Virginia. Like we said, a team that already beat the Mountaineers once this season, so you know it's possible. I think if you do get to the second round of the tournament, this feels like if you're going to have an upset, that this might be where it's at. You might get the Horned Frogs beating the Mountaineers in the second round. You agree?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I didn't even know that they played West Virginia next, so now that pick looks even better.
It does look a lot better now that they play West Virginia.
I do feel like there's an upset here that could happen. TCU, assuming they win their first game, they could go and beat West Virginia. Even though they lost to West Virginia last time they played pretty handedly, 73-55. I don't know. I just think TCU can outplay them. I mean, Small would have to basically be non-existent and not show up.
Which is, I mean, pretty much what happened against Arizona State, right? That's how Arizona State won that game, is he was, I mean, literally missing from the box score. Like, that's how you beat a team like this, and it's kind of like how they've fallen off, right? It reminds me a lot of a team like UCF that maybe has a little bit more talent around their quote-unquote dude, but when he's not playing well or just not, the ball's not going in, teams can take advantage of that, and I could see a team like TCU absolutely exposing that.
100%. TCU, you heard it here.
Captain Redbeard, he is the TCU dude. Okay. Will in the chat saying TCU over West Virginia wouldn't even be considered an upset. It's an 8-9 toss-up game. I guess that's fair, but I still feel like anytime the lower seed wins, it's an upset, right? Like, and that could be, you could disagree with that. Anytime a lower seed, a non-favorite, wins a game, it's an upset in theory. I guess toss-up game, if you'd like to call it that, is the way that you'd really spin it. But overall, West Virginia has been a better team than TCU so far this season. Thus, why they have the 8th seed over the 9th seed. But we'll see. Moving to that next matchup again, Arizona State, Kansas State. We talked about that first round matchup. The winner, unfortunately, is matched up with number 7 Baylor. Both these teams in Kansas State and Arizona State faced the Bears once this season. Both lost. 0-1 for both squads against Baylor. I don't see either one of these teams beating a Baylor Bears team with a guy in VJ Edgecombe, who is going to be a lottery pick, going to be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft. This team in Baylor was a group that was, in all honesty, like I think one of the more disappointing teams in college basketball this season. They were an AP top 25 team. They were supposed to have a really dominant season. They really didn't meet their expectations. But this is still a very, very talented roster. And again, when it comes to a one and done kind of situation, I feel like Baylor is the type of team that we'll talk maybe a little bit about later as potential like surprises throughout this thing that you could see maybe toward the end of it. I think Baylor is going to absolutely bludgeon whoever they see in their first game, whether it be a Kansas State or an Arizona State. Kyle, I don't really see a world where either one of these teams makes it past the second round.
No, Baylor has too many good players that are built for tournaments, I feel like.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, ASU's run will end here, and they'll lose to the Bears again. But that's at least what I think.
Does it go to overtime this time?
No.
If Arizona State somehow sneaks past it?
No. ASU has like 6 players. It's Baylor's going to handle business.
Yeah, whether it's Arizona State or it's Kansas State, I just don't see either one of these teams really being able to keep up with Baylor, especially considering that they will have already been a tournament game in, and Baylor will have that extra day of rest. So I think that'll go a really long way. Will in the chat saying some lower seeds are better teams, just got the short end of the tiebreaker or committee. Yeah, I could see that. I don't see that in this specific scenario. I think you're probably still referring to the TCU West Virginia matchup, but I just don't see it against Kansas State and Arizona State. Baylor is a team, again, that we'll talk about a little bit later, and potential surprises that could really clean this conference out when it comes tournament time. The last potential second round matchup, again, UCF at the 14 seed taking on Utah on the number 11 seed. The winner for those squads plays number 6 Kansas. Feels like the first time in a long time that you don't have Kansas in a top 4 seed in this Big 12 tournament. But Kansas has played both these teams before this season. They beat UCF twice. UCF unable to beat Kansas. Utah, the one time they did play Kansas, they did ultimately win that game. That is the win that I'm referring to as it relates to Utah as maybe the most surprising for the Utes really all season long, to go out there and beat a pretty good Kansas team, regardless of them maybe not being the powerhouse this year that maybe some people expected or that we're so accustomed to seeing. Kansas is still a really good basketball team, still number 6 in this tournament. Do you see a world where Utah or UCF is able to outlast the Jayhawks in a tournament style? Because I just don't see it. I see Kansas taking care of business here.
Yeah, I think Kansas will get it done. They've had a weird year.
Yeah.
Like a very off year for them. But yeah, this is a big test for them, and I think they're going to show up in this tournament.
Yeah, I agree.
Kansas will go far.
This is going to be a team, I think, in Kansas that there are a lot of new teams, right? We obviously know about the new 4 Pac-12 teams that are in the Big 12 tournament for the first time. Arizona getting a bye, Utah with the 11 seed, Arizona State with the 15 seed, Colorado with the 16 seed. Just, again, kind of goes to show you how the Pac-12 basketball compares to the Big 12 basketball, at least as it relates to middle of the pack, right? Those were middle of the pack teams, usually are bottom tier teams in the Pac-12, and they come over to the Big 12 and they're bottom tier teams in this conference as well. Arizona, on the other side of that argument, they get pretty much a double bye as it relates to this Big 12 tournament. So I think Kansas is going to go out there in this tournament and really show everybody who's boss. This is a team that I think gets past whoever they play in the second round. I think they're going to get past probably whoever they see in the third round as well. Don't sleep on the Jayhawks when it comes to the Big 12 tournament. But we're going to give you some other sleepers, some potential winners of this tournament, what's at stake for the losers, and so much more on the other side of this quick break. Guys, of course, we are here in Studio K thanks to our friends over at Circle K right behind me. I know you guys are at home just drooling over all of the great Circle K snacks that we have on this cart behind me. My personal favorite, those kettle cooked jalapeno chips that they have over at Circle K. Literally some of the best chips that I have ever had the pleasure of getting. If you are in desperate need of a snack, go to Circle K. They're going to hook you up. And if you're in desperate need of saving money like me and so many else in today's economy, well, look, Circle K, they're going the extra mile to help you save with their free membership program. It's called Inner Circle. It's super easy to get enrolled. Go to the App Store, download the app, enter your phone number and email, and boom, just like that, you are a part of the Inner Circle. Okay, you're gonna pull up to the pump, type in your phone number, and boom, you're gonna start cashing in on those deals, like saving 25 cents per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups. Make sure you join Inner Circle for free by downloading that Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details. Look, March Madness is incredible, and you know what goes great with March Madness? Pure edibles. Listen, can you imagine just sitting on your couch, indulging in Pure Edibles, watching college basketball's finest? Well, don't dream about it. Make sure you do it. Pure Gummies. Look, they're not covered in sugar like all their competitors, but don't get it twisted. They taste just like candy. Pure is a full-fledged candy company offering gummies, Kicks, which is their version of Starburst Chews, soft candies like caramel, and hard candies. Okay, Pure Effects are clearly listed on each tin, so you know exactly what effects you guys can expect. Make sure you go find yourself some Pure Edibles products from one of the over 130 dispensaries across Arizona. Guys, we're talking Big 12 tournament and some Arizona State hoops as well. Do a solid, hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. Drop a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. Will Jasper in the chat saying Big 12 bracket challenge when ? LOL. Captain Redbeard and I were discussing this right now. I don't know if you guys in the chat know. Maybe you know, Will. I know we're going to do something for March Madness when it happens. Can you do a Big 12 bracket in and of itself? Like, is there a function on ESPN or any of those other apps to where you can actually pick that tournament? I could be wrong. I have never seen it before, but maybe they do have it. If they do have it, I would absolutely love to get that in with maybe the PHNX diehards. We can go run that with the Big 12 tournament. We'll see if we can find something on that end. Maxie in the chat saying, I think BYU is a sneaky shot to win the Big 12 tournament. It's your sleeper pick. Beautiful transition for me, Maxie, because that's exactly what I want to get into. The 4 teams that have double buys here. You got number 1, Houston. No surprise there. Number 2, Texas Tech. Shout out to JT Toppin winning Big 12 Player of the Year. That was announced today. You got number 3, Arizona. Number 4, BYU. Do you have a team, Captain Redbeard, out of those 4 that you think, do you think the Big 12 tourney champion is going to be one of those 4 seeds? Do you see it going maybe in the direction of a Baylor or a team like a TCU, maybe just ripping off a ton of wins getting through conference? Is it Kansas? Where does the winner come from this year? Because this conference does feel really top heavy this year. You could look at, I would say, any team 1 through 7, I think has an argument to win this conference.
I think Houston's going to win it.
You think the favorite gets it done?
I know that's the easy answer, but Houston looks so good.
They do.
When I was watching them play Arizona, dare I mention their name, they were making every single shot down the stretch. It was a close game, and I'm like, this is what you want to see in a tournament team.
Yeah.
And they have it all. They're a well-rounded team. They have stars, they have role players, and a great coach. And I think, they're just going to be hard to beat in this tournament. And then obviously the NCAA tournament as well. I think they're just kind of a juggernaut in a way.
I think that's a great point. I think this is a team in Houston that you mentioned plays phenomenal defense, that has a phenomenal coach. And I think when you get into a tournament setting like this, I think there is a lot to be said about teams that play really, really tight defense, right? We know that is what Houston does, is what they've done for the last couple of seasons. When you get to tournament time, and it is a one and done, right? That is something that sticks with these players when they're out there. So when they're struggling offensively because the opposition is playing such good defense, it almost feels like there are teams out there that panic, right? That are like, okay, we're struggling to find any air here. We just got to start throwing up maybe some bad shots, right? That's what I see the opposition do against Houston at times during the regular season. So when you get to a team that is playing, first off, some of the best basketball that they've played all year long in Houston, you've got a team that is, they've got tournament pedigree, right? This is not a new thing to them. We saw what they did in the NCAA tournament last year. And again, like we've watched them play this year, there aren't really any flaws in what Houston does. This is a team that, I think you described it perfectly, a juggernaut. You are going to have to be on your A game for 2 full halves, maybe more, if you're going to try and beat Houston. With that said, there are some teams, I think, also in that double bye category that you could look at and be like, okay, I could see it. Arizona at the number 3 seed, and I swear to you, I'm not being biased here. I don't see a team in Arizona getting past a Houston to win the tournament. I really don't. However, the other teams with double byes, I think you can make arguments for. A team in BYU, right, with a guy like Richie Saunders in the 3-point assassins that they have wearing blue and white. That's a very scary team, and they have been playing as good as anybody in this conference over the last couple of weeks, right? Credit to Maxey saying he's the sleeper pick for them. I think BYU is going to be not only a scary team in the Big 12 tournament, I think BYU, quite frankly, is going to be a scary team in the NCAA tournament, right? When we get to March Madness, when we go dancing, I could very easily see a world where BYU finds a way to go into the Sweet 16. I don't think that's a stretch. I think Texas Tech is another team, a team who, again, has the Big 12 Player of the Year in JT Toppin, who is going for 20 and 10 a night, it feels like, in his sleep. Okay, we've seen him do more. We've seen him go for 40 plus. Okay, he is a monster. I think, again, when you get to this tournament style, there is a lot to be said about teams that have just one guy who can just go off. Now, I'm not saying JT Toppin is Texas Tech by himself. Overall, they've been a really good program, a really good team all year long. So I could see Texas Tech. I could see BYU maybe giving Houston some fits. But I'm with you. I think Houston is a team that from top to bottom, this is a brick wall. And you are going to need to play your best game possible to beat Houston. I just don't see that happening, considering Houston not only has been playing this well, but they also get 2 full rounds of not having to play a game, right? This is a team that really gets to sit back. They're going to be playing, whoever comes out of, I believe let's see, let me go back and look. You've got the Cincinnati, Oklahoma State winner playing Iowa State. You'll probably end up seeing, I think, Houston against Iowa State, which I think will be a phenomenal matchup. But Houston, again, at the end of the day, is just too good of a team, I think, in my estimation. Don't sleep on Baylor. Don't sleep on Baylor. I really, really like Baylor this year. I know, again, they've underperformed. But Baylor is a team I could see at the end of it. I could see a team in Iowa State also being in the end of it. Do you have any disagreements with any of those teams? I think if Iowa State beats Houston, I think they win it all.
Wow. You heard it here.
I feel like that's not a crazy thing to say. If they go through and beat Houston, a team that is certainly deserving of a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, if they beat them in the Big 12 tourney after Houston has 2 full rounds off, Iowa State's the team you don't want to see.
That's true. I mean, is there a tougher team that they would face afterwards? Like
Iowa State?
Yeah, like if they beat Houston.
I mean,
is there a team they should worry about? But
I think, again, Houston's is the worst matchup for all these teams just because of how they play defense, right? Like, they are on you like glue for 2 halves. And there are teams that you've seen in the past that play really good defense that maybe there are stretches in a game where it's like, okay, they're tired, right? Playing this tight defense is exhausting for teams. But this is a team in Houston that has such a deep team. They've got a deep rotation. They all play defense. Their offensive system, like, they're not selfish basketball players. They share the ball. They've got a good identity. They've got a coach who's been here. Like, the moment's not too big. Like, I really don't think if it, like, whoever beats Houston, if anybody, should be the favorite to win the rest of the tournament, at least in the Big 12. I think, again, like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, I think there are some interesting conversations to be had about Tech, about BYU. Baylor is another one. Kansas, you could even throw in there. But overall, I think these are realistically the teams that are going to be chasing Houston from the top to the bottom. Now, in terms of the losers of this Big 12 tournament, right, there is, I think, a lot to be said about teams and programs that have a lot to lose in the next couple of days, starting with our Arizona State Sun Devils, right? You know that this season has been pretty disgusting to watch if you're an Arizona State fan. It feels like there is a 75-25 split from the fan base, and maybe that's me even being too fair in terms of folks that want this to be Bobby Hurley's last week as an Arizona State Sun Devil. And then there are those that want, Bobby to maybe run it back. I think there are fewer in that camp than there are for the Bobby Hurley to be gone camp. But I think, again, this is a team in Arizona State. If they do lose on Tuesday, which I think is the expectation, against Kansas State, then I think it is not out of this world to say that Bobby Hurley loses his job at Arizona State. I think Arizona State, the fan base, could be a winner in this scenario, which is a unique thing to say, that if the team loses, then the fan base wins. But I think that is certainly something in this conversation. You could also look at it from the flip side of this conversation. Is there a world where Arizona State maybe makes a run? Is there a world where, hey, they've got their backs up against the wall, it's tournament style, and they just run through the first two teams because I can't even give you a reason why. I can't even think of a reason why how this team would do it. But if they do, then I think that's a conversation, right? That at least Graham Rossini, the athletic director at Arizona State, is going to be like, hey, this team wasn't supposed to do much in this tournament, but they did. Like, here we are. I think that's certainly something, but I think overall Arizona State could be a loser here. Bobby Hurley could certainly be a loser in the Big 12 tournament. I think another team, Colorado, is a team that's been really, really bad all season long. And if they do indeed lose to TCU in the first round of this tournament, I could see them moving on from their basketball coach as well. He's been there for literally ages, it feels like. I know it's kind of a cop-out to say that these teams could be losers because they've been so bad. But I do also think you throw Kansas into this conversation as well, right? A team that for a very, very long time has been the cream of the crop in the Big 12. We know that they are not a team getting a double bye. They are the number 6 seed in this conference tournament. If they do, in fact, get bounced in their first game, I think that could really spell trouble for Kansas long-term in the Big 12. Over the last 2 seasons, the conference has continued to add talent. If they're not even able to make it past their first game, what does that say about Kansas's quote-unquote ownership of the Big 12? Maybe that it's up, right? Maybe you pass that baton to Houston. Maybe that baton already belongs to an Iowa State. What about an Arizona coming from the Pac-12? What about a BYU? What about a Texas Tech, right? I think Kansas could be a big-time loser, especially if they get bounced in their very first game. Will in the chat saying, if Bobby can get Koa Pete to commit in the next week, he might get another year. How many times do we have to have this conversation of, well, if Bobby does this, then he gets to come back? And you know what my favorite part about these conversations are, Captain Redbeard, is every time that we talk about Bobby Hurley potentially coming back, it has nothing to actually do with the results on the court. Every single time it's about the roster. Every single time it's like, oh, if they get Jayden Quaintance or Josan Sannon back, give him another year. If he gets Koa Pete, give him another year. Why? Because there's more talent to be wasted? That's what happens. This year you had so much talent. You didn't do anything. You're 15 out of 16 here. You tell me you go get Koa Pete and lose Quaintance and Sannon, what does that do? Nothing. It's just more 5 stars that you're not going to be able to develop here. It just has not worked. There is something to be said about just calling it time of death. Okay, no resuscitate here. Do not resuscitate. Like, it's time to move on. Okay, at least that's where I'm at here. I don't care if you get called Pete. I don't care if you retain Quaintance or Sannon. You need a fresh start. This program needs a breath of fresh air. It just does. You see it across sports all the time. All the time, dude. Where there are programs and coaches and players even where it's like they've had this marriage and it's been like on the verge of being okay, right? Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. And it's not meant to be. That's what this is. I just don't think it's meant to be. I think Bobby Hurley's had some great highs at Arizona State. He does. I think he's had some bad lows. But we talked about it the other day. If you look at any professional sport, any college sport, and you just simply break it down to what matters most, which is championships and postseason, that's all that matters. Let's stop acting like regular season matters when it doesn't. Postseason is what matters. That's why I'm saying again, if Bobby Hurley goes on a magical run here, sure, bring him back because the postseason matters. But in the last decade, he's been to the tourney 3 times, and they've never made it past the first round. That's the postseason. He's 30%. 3 of 10 is not good enough in the postseason. It wouldn't be good enough for ASU football. If ASU football was bowl eligible 3 of the last 10 years, you think they'd keep their coach? If ASU baseball or softball went to the tournament 3 of the last 10 years, you think they'd keep their coach? And it's not just ASU, it's any sport. Any sport. Go to the NFL. Would Jonathan Gannon be the coach for the Arizona Cardinals if they made the postseason 3 of 10 years? No shot. You can't afford to have that mentality. And I see it all the time. And a lot of the time it comes from Wildcat fans that are like, oh, Arizona State, they couldn't do any better. Bobby Hurley's the best you could do. That's a loser mentality that you can keep to yourself in Tucson. Not entertaining that here. You got to at least go try. If you try and fail, I can live with that. If you swing and try and hit a home run, but you miss, cool. But I'm tired of bunting. I'm tired of sitting here and hitting singles. I'm done. Go shoot for the moon. Because you know what happens when you shoot for the moon, Kyle? Sometimes you land among the stars. Okay? And that's what Arizona State needs to try and do. I'm tired of go get me a 5-star, serve it up on a silver platter, and we'll go 500 next year. Screw that, man. Can't do it. That's just my 2 cents on it. I know people do not give a diddly squat what I have to say when it comes to certain things, but I need to get that out. I need to say my piece as it relates to Hurley moving forward. Okay? Look, we've still got some time on the PHNX Sun Devils show today. Appreciate everybody sticking around this long, and I hope you stick around past this final break. Look, if you guys are in the market for a new home, I'm going to cut to the chase. There is just one team that you guys need to look to, and that is the Carol Royce team. Okay, look, our real estate market is competitive. As competitive, if not more, than the Big 12. But like a great coach, the Carol Royce team is going to build you a game plan to get you into the perfect home for you. That's right. The perfect home for me may not be the perfect home for Captain Redbeard, may not be the perfect home for you at home, but that's what makes the Carol Royce team so great. They're going to make sure that they do everything to help you, the buyer, okay? When you go with the Carol Royce team, know that you're going to get the best home for the best possible price, okay? Carol's so confident that you're going to love your home, that if within 18 months you aren't happy with it, the Carol Royce team is going to buy it back. That is a ridiculous offer. If you're ready to find your dream home, take that next step, call Carol Royce or visit Carol online at carolroyceteam.com. That's carolroyceteam.com. Terms and conditions apply. Look, it is March. Like I said in the cold open, it's tournament time, okay? And you can catch all the March action at the BetMGM Sportsbooks over at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. They got the perfect setup for every single fan. They got reserved seating over at Wild Horse Pass and Santan Mountain, and enjoy the excitement with open seating at Lone Butte v. Cueva. Bet on the madness and experience the thrill, okay? Head out, Gila River Resorts Casinos, whether you are over betting on the March Madness action or you're just maybe signing up for a little bit of a staycation here in the Valley. Remember, you do you at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit playatgila.com for more details. Appreciate everybody watching live, watching after the fact, or listening on audio. I know I ask you guys quite often, hit that like button. Goes a long way. For me, for Captain Redbeard, for everybody here at PHNX. And if you guys missed it, we're going to be doing our 24-hour stream in just 10 days. 10 days that I hope take forever to actually get to. 24 hours, the first day of the NCAA tournament. We will be right here, jam-packed show all day, all night, all morning long. 24 hours long. Captain Redbeard, are you ready for it, man?
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to it.
You're juiced?
I think it's going to be a good challenge.
What are you looking forward to most? Anything specific?
Getting creative.
Creative.
Like when it gets into like hour 14.
Oh, God.
You know, I want to see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And
Delusion.
we're gonna lose our minds.
Delusion is what happens. It's at
How
what
many
point,
brackets can we fill out? You know,
at what point do you think we lose our minds individually?
At what point?
Individual. Give me your hour. Give me my hour. Give me Rubus's hour.
Individually.
Because I don't think we all go delusional at the same time.
No.
I think we're all gonna hit different breaking points.
I think Rubus is gonna get to. I'm gonna say like hour 8. Hour 8.
Okay.
And
so
then,
a third of the way, he's going to lose his mind. Yeah. Okay.
And then I'll say you'll get to hour 11.
Okay. Almost halfway through.
And I'll be good.
You'll be good. You're just rocking and rolling the entire time.
Yeah.
I love it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Again, March 20th from 9 a.m. to March 21st, 9 a.m. Make sure you guys are there. I do want to get back into the Big 12 tournament conversation, zooming in on Arizona State, because you see that little guy, where is he? Right there. That's a little Sun Devil. Okay, so we're talking Arizona State. It is time for Fact or Cap. This one's for you, Captain Redbeard, and everybody at home. Fact or Cap, Arizona State is going to be a one and done in the Big 12 tournament. I know you already made your appeal on it. I know you think Arizona State sneaks past Kansas State. How do you think it happens, though? Because as it has looked for the last couple of weeks, there's been an Arizona State team that does play hard. They do come out with a lot of energy, and there are times where they go on runs, where they go on stretches, and you're like, okay, man, like this team, they could win a ball game. But they just run out of gas, especially with about 10, 15 minutes left in that second half. It looks like their legs turn into jelly. They start taking bad shots. There's not enough help from the bench. How do they get it done in your estimation?
Sean Phillips, career game. It's going to have to be a just lights out performance. Like I said, Alston Mason over 30. Joson 25. Bashir, great game. You know, he's been averaging 15, 17 the last few games.
Something along those lines.
Yep. And then Sean Phillips, career game. He's going to have to go all out at that center position.
Sean Phillips' career game is what is saving Arizona State in the Big 12 tournament. Is it? If I would have told you that, if I would have told you 6 months ago that we would be here the day before the Big 12 tournament. And I said, hey, Captain Redbeard, you know what's going to save Arizona State in the first round? It's going to be a Sean Phillips career game. What would your response have been?
I would have started laughing immediately. Be like, that is an incredible story.
Oh, it would be an incredible story. Nobody can deny that. It would be an incredible story if Bobby Hurley somehow got Sean Phillips to turn into prime Shaquille O'Neal to go beat Kansas State in the first round of the tournament. I'm here for it. Okay? Sharon in the chat saying with the injuries, probably not beating anyone right now. Will agreeing with that sentiment, saying fact that Arizona State will indeed be one and done in the Big 12 tournament. So I guess that leaves me and anybody else that has any thoughts on it in the chat. It's fact. Arizona State is going to be one and done in the Big 12 tournament. The number 15 seed, the Sun Devils, going to drop to the number 10 Kansas State Wildcats. Why? Well, a number of reasons. How about coaching? How about depth? How about star power? How about injuries? How about all of it? All of these things have contributed to Arizona State having an awful Big 12 season. Said it a while ago, it's not all on Bobby Hurley. It's not all on the players. It's been a cluster of unfortunate happenings at Arizona State in 2025. I think that's what you have to put in the history book at the end of this season. What happened in 2024, 2025 when Bobby Hurley hit a decade in Tempe, when he had the best class that he's had in 10 years? Oh, a cluster of unfortunate happenings. Josan Sandin's missed time. BJ Freeman no longer with the program. Nobody's seen Jayden Quaintance in a while, dealing with injuries. What happened to Brandon Gardner? Austin Nunez done for the year. All of these things have led to where Arizona State is at right now. And now you tell me. Now you tell me when we get to tournament time in a conference that's known for college basketball, in a conference that has Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Arizona, Baylor, Texas Tech, BYU, you tell me that Arizona State's only chance to make the NCAA tournament, realistically the only chance to keep Bobby Hurley, is they've got to win it all. A team that never, think about that, never won the Pac-12 tournament. Every other team in the Pac-12 at one point or another won the Pac-12 tournament. Arizona State, the lone wolf on the other side, didn't win it once. So, do I think that they come out here on Tuesday in Kansas City after losing 9 of their last 10 games? Do they beat the only team that they've beat in those last 10 games? No. They don't do it. I'm not saying they're checked out. I'm not saying they're not going to show up hard and play. Not saying they're not going to try. But what I'm saying is sometimes everything you have is not good enough. And in this conference, when it comes to the Big 12 tournament, everything that Arizona State has left is just simply not enough. Guys, that is going to do it for today's episode of the PHNX Sun Devils Show. Appreciate everybody sticking around for an hour, getting ready for the Big 12 tournament. Of course, we will be doing a Big 12 Arizona State, Kansas State post-game show tomorrow after the game. Make sure you are there. Hit the like button on your way out. Hit the subscribe button on the way out. And if you enjoyed the content, give the show a follow on social at PHNX_Sun Devils. You can follow me at Anthony_Totri. You could follow the man with the most glorious red beard on the 7 seas. That is, of course, Captain Redbeard. You can follow him at KCoop Sports. Guys and gals, if you couldn't tell by the mustache, no speeding on those highways. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow. In the meantime, go Devils. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.